This week it's a blast from the past for medieval combat video review. When I saw that video from the 1993 Ansteorra Crown Finals was posted, I just absolutely had to take a look. So let's see what top tier fighting was like a quarter century ago, and take a look at this match between Duke Hector on the left, and at the time, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know these gents, so I had to do a little research, Sir Kein on the right. And I also want to take just a moment to thank folks for all the kind support and consideration that I've been given. It's been, as you might have noticed, a little slow for me getting these videos up since I moved from Europe. Or sorry, I should say moved to Europe. And I've been, a little frustrated with a bit of a shoulder injury as well, so I let these videos fall by the wayside, and a number of people have spoken to me and told me that they're really helpful for them, so I really appreciate all the kind words of encouragement, and it's motivated me to try to drop one of these every week. So hopefully, if I can keep it up, it's going to be Fridays every week. We're going to drop another medieval combat video review, and let's take a look. So this is SCA Combat in the year 1993, and the victor of this best 2 out of 3 match is going to move on to become the next king of Ansteorra in the SCA. So you're invulnerable from the knees down and from the wrists up. Otherwise, it takes a hard blow to the head or body to end the fight, and to a limb disables the limb. So as always, we're going to go through an entire bout and then go back and break it down bit by bit. And here we can see right off the bat a few things that to me are really interesting. We've got a right-handed fighter in Sir Kein, left-handed fighter in Duke Hector. They're both fighting with pretty long swords. Looks like neither of them have a stabbing tip on their swords or a thrusting point. And they're both fighting with quite wide shields. You can tell that it's an off-handed fight because of the techniques that they're using, but they've also, to me this doesn't look 25 years old. You might think that things have changed a ton, and in some ways they have, but the sort of speed and power that they're throwing with, especially the speed with which some of those surprise offside headshots comes out, is pretty quick. And the video quality is actually not bad for 25 years ago either, so let's go back and take a look at how Sir Kein found victory in this match. As always, the first thing you want to do is size up your opponent. You've got right-hander, left-hander, you've got 2 arm strap shields. Duke Hector's shield doesn't have a point coming down to protect the front of his knee. Both of those shields are flat. The other thing I'll note is the back edge on both of those shields sticks out pretty far past the elbow, so you actually have a bit of a good back edge block with them. So as they step out, they also have quite long swords. Their guard also, this is one you don't see terribly often, but they're using the sword to guard the head quite a lot, while the shield is pushed over to the far side. So what does that mean? If I'm Sir Kein, the shields come this way to help protect against this leg from a left-handed fighter on the other side, because the real threat from the other fighter is going to be a shot that snakes down in here, or a shot that comes over here, to the top of the head, or to the bottom of the leg. So that top of the head shot is that offside headshot that's going to come in horizontal that we're going to see a whole bunch, and in fact ended up winning this fight. And the other one you're going to see is a lot of wraps to the leg, generally when fighting an off-handed fighter. So you can see they've both got their guard up. They're both using the blade of their sword to protect their head. They're using the width of their shield. And the other thing you're noticing right off the bat, Sir Kein is moving and circling. He's always moving away from his opponent's shield side. Sorry, truck moving by. So by circling this way, he's always moving away from his opponent's shield, and that's here, I should say. Be a little bit more clear about which fighter I'm talking about. Sir Kein is moving this way, and Duke Hector is rotating in place. So you can see that they're both in a similar guard. One thing that surprises me a little bit is this shield angle that you see from Kein that's actually back. So the front tip is sneaking forward a little bit. Often when I see that, it's because the shield is hung awkwardly, or it's a new fighter using a shield that doesn't suit them very well. Most people would prefer to have their shield out of the other direction. So that might be regional, it might just be a factor of when it was, or it might be a particular peculiarity of the fighters involved. But look at how quick that first offside shoots out. We're going frame by frame, and I think this is 30 frames a second, right? And also keep in mind that basket hilt is hidden behind the shield edge, right? So Hector doesn't have a good sight line on that hand. So the hand starts to move, and really the only tell is that if you watch, there's a bit of a hip shift. Sorry, it's sort of noisy. There's a bit of a hip shift to generate some power, and then a straight punch out, and then the tip comes out as well. So I've heard people talk about like techniques just in recent years that look a lot like what you're seeing in Ansteorra right here. So that shot comes out really fast, but you can also tell that with that guard that Duke Hector's got, he just picks it up with the forte of his own sword, just a small hand block, not much required to hand block, and he does so in a way that he can immediately counter with the same shot. You know, so if you look at, I've got a couple earlier videos about people at Candlemas using very similar techniques. You know, recently that hand basically pops out in a jab, and the back foot counterbalances backward. So that technique that seemed pretty new to me is actually all the way back to 1993, and then there's the counter there. The back foot on Hector doesn't come out, but you see him push his hips and butt back to get the power. Right, so very quick shot, counter shot. So let's take a look, and they both do the sword block. At speed, very fast. Right, so you can tell that that's really what they're watching for. That would be a kill for either of them, so they've got to have their defense up for that really fast shot, and it's often going to hit the eyes. This is the 90s, so if I get a little political, you'll see, you know, at the time, people wanted to be hit by blows that would hurt a man in armor, or a woman in armor. Nowadays, I think people are more like, well, if it was clean and loud, and it looked good, you know, I'll acknowledge that it hit me and grant you the fight. But in the honor system, you know, 25 years ago, it was more like you had to actually do something that I thought would injure me if we were fighting with real weapons. So you've got to land fast and hard, and anything to the eyes is going to be counted a lot lighter. So there you see that same mechanic. And the other thing you'll notice is they're both trying to do it in between steps. So look at Kein's footwork when he throws that shot. I'm just going to try to keep it steady, but super slow. One foot's in the air. He's on the step with his back foot when he throws that shot. Right? And Hector, again, picks up the block and counters. So that first shot comes out, it's a surprise on-the-move shot, picked up with the heel block, and then the counter, barely picked up. And now, this is the first moment where, to me, it seems someone's vulnerable. There's been a bit of a bad bounce, and if you look at where Hector's sword is, it's sort of down and trapped. You'd have to respond really quickly, but this is an opportunity where the sword is awkward. You can tell the hand is rotated the wrong way, the elbow's up, he's trying to get the weapon out from in between them, so good chance to counter. The challenge here is the counter ends up being a high offside, and you can tell that Kein's reaching for it. He's trying to get around and deep. You can see he's up on his feet, he's up on his toes, I should say, but even with the sword tipped down, it's not too hard for Hector to have moved the basket hill back and get the hanging block. And then with those big shields, getting that leg wrap blocked, not too much of a problem. Here now you can see, I would say the tables have turned. This big shield edge is protecting right now the back of that head, but you can see Duke Hector's just waiting to throw an offside if that head comes out. And it doesn't. So this is really smart here. Kein, instead of bringing his shield back down and exposing his head, what he's going to do instead is get his head out a different side, so as to not become victim to that offside headshot. So reset, and here we go again. You can see when they get in range, they both bring their guards up, and just as Kein's bringing his guard up, remember these are long swords, Hector does a shuffle forward and throws for that offside head. This is the first time we see a shield edge block, and you know, here you can see that gives the opportunity to counter. So you're not using your sword to counter, that means you can simultaneously counter strike, and he throws for a leg wrap, and it's picked up again by that shield edge. It's a nice wide shield. We talked earlier about how it wasn't curved to a point, so the fact that it's rectangular and at that length means that that corner got picked up on the block. And here once again, we see a position where Kein's head is low, and Duke Hector's looking for the offside. He wants to just bring it down here. Kein's not going to give the chance. He gets out. And once again, saved by that back shield edge, something you don't see a ton in other areas. But you can see, just like before, only a bit in reverse, Hector's up on his toes, trying to get up over top of that shot, and Kein has to really drop low and then bring his shield edge in to protect him. And it's really close. And he gets out. So cool exchange. And once again, you know, and you can always tell the direction someone's going to circle. Usually, you don't see a lot of motion nowadays. You might see some fighters circle one way and then do a quick step back. Here, it's been pretty consistent the whole time. That's often the direction that offhanded fights will circle. Is, you know, if you're looking from the top, it's anti-clockwise. How can you tell I've been living in Europe? I didn't say counterclockwise. But once again, here's actually a good shot to see what's open on Duke Hector, and it's just that side. And you know that if you throw a shot, he's just going to pop that basket hilt over to sort of block, deflect, and counter super fast, right? So it's a pretty good defense, especially with the width of that shield. Again, recognizing you're invulnerable from the knees down in the SCA. So here you see Kein doing some body motion. You'll see this a little bit later. He's trying to get Hector to respond, and Hector's just pretty cool and calm. So when he does respond, what gets him to? Again, feint that shot, that fast offside, and from our perspective at this speed, you can tell it doesn't look quite the same as the other times that it was a real offside, but from Hector's perspective, remember, he can only see what's above the shield, so he only really gets above the blue box. So he sees that tip go, he's got to protect, there's his protection against the offside, and because the offside doesn't come, he actually blocks a lot deeper than he would normally. So in a sense, this is a very effective fake, and now Kein's lifted his shield up. He's offering a ton of defense up there. Hector's sword is already over on this side of the body. So the vulnerable area by lifting your shield up against a left-hander is down here. However, because the sword is up here and crossed across the body from that earlier fake, lifting the shield up means basically there's impunity to attack right now on Kein's part, because there's no way a shot can come in over here over that long shield edge, and it's going to take a long time for a shot to come over that way. So now he's throwing for a leg wrap. Again, common shot against an offhanded fight while moving away from the weapon, but Duke Hector's shield is just there, right? It's big, it's wide, it's got that, it doesn't taper at the bottom, so he's able to pick up that wrap pretty carefully. There's that same, boom, offside, right? And you can see that it just snakes out really fast. And minor block from Hector. This time, the counter actually comes from a slightly different angle and does connect a little bit. But it's right after the sword is bounced. You can see the way his Duke Hector's sword bounces back. He uses some of that power from the bounce to throw his shot in. But it looks like it lands, it looks like it sort of skips a little bit off the top of the helmet. And again, this is at a time where you're saying, I'm a man in a helmet, you're a man with a sword. Would that have actually injured me? Not really. And look at, here comes the other counter, and Hector's managed to block most of that with his sword. And we square up again. Here, this time, usually we see Kein being, sorry, it is a video from the 90s, and I'm zoomed pretty far in. This time it's Hector that opens. And we see one of our first, as we move forward, one of our first attempts at a wrap, or a high wrap. That one's guarded by the basket hilt, and more of those offsides. So let's take a look at that real quick. We watch it at actual speed. This is a cool exchange. So Hector decides to take the risk of being the person to open, then the wrap, and I think it's actually the wrap that lands and kills him. Yeah, he's saying it got me just inside the shoulder there. So that risk of being the person who opened there, he opens, Kein's waiting for it, and throws a shot he hasn't thrown the entire first half of the bout, and throws over the top and tags him just inside the shoulder for a body kill, and he's done. So there's the first bout. That was a pretty good match. All right, so next is for the second fight of 3. Let's take a look at speed again, and then we'll break it down. Those same offside, counter offside. There's also a decent chance these guys have fought each other many times before. There's a wrap, and there's a first time you see sort of a chopping offside as Kein gets out from Duke Hector. Again, really stable defense, very calmly protecting himself, doing sort of the minimum amount of motion to block. So there's a British siren for you. Sorry about that. There you actually see Hector sort of faking on the way in. He does a couple different hand pumps to try to get Kein to respond, and does get him to respond a bit, but Kein's, I think, instinct is to get out whenever he's not in full control of the situation. And Hector doesn't want to chase, right? So the last time Hector put on the offensive was when he got counter hit. But There we see Kein does give chase, and in a position where this really was a quiet spot to sit when I sat down to do it. For that last hit, we actually see a spot where it looks like Duke Hector has no counter because he's in such a compromised position, but he actually did, and I think Kein was counting on him not being able to hit back. So we can probably go through the first couple of these pretty quick. Right? We've seen that before. Either of those could have been a killing blow, especially to the eyes. Right? So these guys are doing the same sort of fight as before. There's that first chopping offside. This is when I see Sir Marcus Von Tier throw a lot. And Duke Hector probably does it at first because he sees Kein's getting out of range. So Hector's moving right, and that draws the leg wrap. You see the leg sticking out? So Kein's throwing the leg wrap, but Hector stops his motion and blocks and goes for the counter here. Now, because Kein's moving out, he chases. Instead of throwing that jab offside, he throws as a slash offside to try to catch him on the way out, but that back edge of the shield. Again, really wide shields, so that back edge is actually really useful. Here we see a preview of what is to come. We see Kein goes high, pushes Hector down, goes for a high offside. That's well protected, but because you look at Hector's compromised position here, I think that's why he can't throw a counter, right? He's bent over, his back feet, he's on his heels. Really difficult to throw from that position. And his sword is behind his own shield, is behind Kein's shield. If you look up here, his basket's below the shield edge, right? So that's a pretty safe spot for Kein right now because he's got Hector bent over double. But Hector does have that big shield again, once again. Might attack the leg a little bit, I think he acknowledges, but it's mostly shield edge. But we'll see that happen again. Now here comes one of these lightning fast offsides. This one I don't think caught the eyes, right? So you see it shoots out, and again, just like we saw Kein doing earlier, if you watch the footwork, I can't seem to get that down at the feet, sorry. But if you watch the footwork down here, you're going to see that he throws it in between steps, sort of. So he's just moving forward a pace, and that shot shoots out. Again, not a lot of tell. The only real tell is that the shield edge drops just a little bit to make room, and then the hand shoots out for that offside. And most of the block is in there. Now, that's not the head bouncing back from like a super hard blow. That's Kein trying to move his head out of the way at the last moment because he didn't see the shot coming. But I don't think it landed hard enough, and it was the side of the head, not the eye slot. But close call. Now, here's that point where we saw earlier. It looks like Hector goes up high, steps low, body pump. He's dropped his sword. This is looking like it's going to be a low leg shot onside. He hasn't thrown any onside leg shots. Now, if it could be a rising onside head shot, right? He hasn't thrown any of those, but it's looking like, and now it starts to convert over. Maybe it's going to be an offside. Now we're reading an offside. And this is looking pretty good for Duke Hector because he's got, when he dipped down and back up, he actually got Kein to dip down. He also got Kein to bring his shield over and up. And he doesn't have Kein's sword, look, is over here. So this is a dangerous position for Kein to be in. His sword's over here, and we all know exactly what a left-hander like Duke Hector is looking for. So you can see he didn't throw the first shot, he didn't throw the second shot. It's all a setup to get his opponent out of position. Out of position, out of position, out of position. Boom, there it is. That shield's coming up, and now it's circling back just in time. So Hector sees that head gets covered and doesn't throw the opening shot. And I think the saving thing right here is instead of Kein shoving his shield this way, what he does is a circle. So he circle blocks by rotating his shield up and out instead of punching it out. Up and back. That circle, I think, saved the top of his head. And then we see that sort of slash as he gets out again. Cool exchange. Continue watching through some of these, and we'll get to that killing blow pretty soon. We've seen that exchange before. It's almost like a replay of what we saw twice already. And then coming in here, that almost looks like a replay as well, but there's one key difference. So what happened? Remember, we saw them in this position before. The main difference, right? So we see, once again, we see Duke Hector throws that opening offside snap. That's blocked by a slight cross block. Now Kein comes in. You see that shield edge come forward. That's giving us a hint as to why he likes to have that tip back. Remember I said his shield angle's like this. Most people like it like that. He wants to press, get in high, and it worked really well before. Remember we had him we had Duke Hector in this bent, compromised position over his heels and stuff. The key element, the thing that you're really looking for, is right here. Oop, right there. Boy, that's a hard tool to aim. I keep trying to be fancy and I keep letting you down. So the thing is, before, Hector's hand was stuck behind Kein's shield. This time his hand is above it. That means because his hand is above it, even though his eyes are currently covered and his body's currently covered, he knows that his hand can see the head. So this looks like a deeply compromised position, and Kein's in a strong body position. He's all forward. He's got control of the fight. His sword is ready to strike. He's just looking for the opportunity. When is it going to become available? Is it going to be the leg over here? Is it going to be the offside head? And he's looking for the shot, and you can tell he just doesn't even think an offense is possible, but that hand is above the shield edge. So even from this compromised position, look at, he gets bent way over backward, right? His hips are at 147 degrees from vertical or whatever, and you would think that that's a really dangerous position, but this is a Duke and a left-hander. What he's going to do is rotate around the right side of his body and just pop that offside in. It's going to be his bread and butter. And look, as he does it, we get to see him do something that he'd done before. His hips were forward. He's going to pull his hips and butt out to get the power. Boom. And you can tell it's such a surprise. Like, he's taking the shot, there's the follow-up insurance, he's done. So, again, I would feel like I was in control of that position if I had my opponent bent over like that, especially if it had happened earlier in the fight. But Duke Hector sort of had him patterned, and we're off for the third bout. Let's see how this is going to go. Now it's the person who wins the next fight is going to take the crown. And if I remember correctly, they stare off at each other for a long time. This is, I'm scrubbing forward like 15 seconds here. So one of them is catching his breath. The other's probably letting him as a matter of courtesy. So again, this is a courteous fight. If it was sort of like do or die, you might say like, well, I'm tired, but I think you're more tired, so I'm just going to press the offensive. And these gentlemen are being very courteous to each other, so when they're both ready, they'll both begin, even though they were allowed to start earlier. There you see something similar, and it's actually going to be a precursor to something we see later. Another, we saw Duke Hector do that earlier. This time, Kein doing a bunch of body fakes, and that's actually the blow that ends the fight right there. So you can't tell at first, but Duke Hector takes a leg shot, and now they have a long discourse. The audio's not great. I will send a link, I'll include a link below to this source video, but they have a conversation here, and in this area, in Ansteorra, often what you'll have is people relent the fight instead of fighting from their knees. I think that's pretty cool. One, because the SCA has a weird rule where you kneel and fight from the ground. But two, because in that area, when you have someone on their knees, you just sort of, it is acceptable to just pretty much brutalize them from that position, whereas other areas, that's not the case. So Kein is asking Hector, would you like to relent? Would you like to concede the fight to me? And Duke Hector is saying, if you'll be a good king. And Kein, right there, becomes king. Which is wonderful. Well, I should say right there becomes crown prince pretty soon thereafter, and then will become king. So let's take a look at that last exchange. All right, so this one went pretty quick. I think we can go through it in slow motion and just break down the final blow. So there's that offside. We actually see them both going for the leg wrap. Oh, I didn't go back far enough. I apologize. Here we go. We had one previous exchange there to go through. So here we see that fake again, and this time going for a deep wrap. So you see again, it almost works too. He goes down low, he fakes that. You see he pulls the hand back and he's faking that offside shot that you know you need to be really quick to block. And this is really close. This almost ends the fight, because if you watch what's going on here, there's the fake, and the hand moves again. Duke Hector, minimal motions to block. Very, very minimal. But he moves just a little bit. And then take a look. That moves critically. That moves this sword from here to here. Just a little bit, not even that far. Just a little bit out of the way. But we all know that there's an opening on that side. And it's a side that we haven't thrown for very often. So what Kein does is get him to move his sword just a hair. See that little bit of movement. And then he's going to throw a deep wrap to that corner, and he's actually off the ground when he throws it. Look at his feet. He's off the ground when that lands. I think that actually is what robs some of the power, because that does end up connecting just a bit. Right? The sword comes over to block it a bit, maybe, or just a little late. The shield edge catches some of it. But if it had been a really powerful shot, that would have just smoked into the head. But he's also flying forward. So it's a really cool shot. He goes, pump fake. Look at that. Move. Gets his feet under him and launches up. Duke Hector, if he was the kind of person to block a little bit more than he had to, that would have really gotten in there. And you don't often see a head wrap like that in an offhanded fight. And then on the way out, if Hector had taken a step, here's an insurance shot, just a grass cutter, and it actually hits Kein's own leg, light or flat. But that's just to protect him on the way out. All right, and now is our final pass. There's that opening offside. This time we see Hector actually block with the shield. Normally he's blocking with the sword, but because he's on the way in, he's got a plan. The sword's coming down. This reads as a leg wrap all day long. So that leg wrap comes in, and it does connect. Probably not very hard. You see it land right there. And this is moving so fast at this point, it's really difficult to even tell between frames on this old video where Kein's sword is. But it looks like, from this position, it looks like Hector's sword is actually going to protect him from any blow that Kein can throw in, because it's going to hit the top of that sword. So if he counter wraps, it's not going to work. But if you watch really carefully, he gets under the sword tip, I think, to land his leg wrap. You can see right here, in this area, he just clears the tip, it looks like, of Hector's sword to get under it and scoop up and throw it hard and land that just past that shield edge. And there you go. That's the blow that ends up winning the fight. Well, thank you very much for taking a look. Again, I really appreciate all of the encouragement and feedback that I've been getting. I will be trying to drop these every Friday. That schedule is something I'm going to try to keep up with. Let me know if that's helpful for you, though. I've been told that being predictable is more important than just about anything else for being helpful to people. So if that predictability is something that you would benefit from, let me know and I'll keep it up. And I guess if I haven't heard of that in a little while, I'll probably get lazy at some point and miss a weekend. All right, thank you very much.